This next demonstration, we are going to go over the plate definition schedule, how to add base and cap plates to the plate definition schedule. So go to the SDS2 main menu, and we will come down to job and fabricator options under the setup utility. As you open that window, on the left hand side under connection options, you'll see plate definition schedule. We'll open up that, and you get this window here with the plate definition schedule. As you can see, there are some plates in here already. Since we copied this from a previous NTC job, there are options or plates in here. So for our project, we're going to look at your drawing, project 1 drawings, sheet S1, and you will see the anchor bolt plan. So typically what you do is you go through and figure out all the different combinations of base plates that you have, and you create the base plates in the definition schedule here. So for our plans here, what I would suggest doing is, as we look at sheet S1, let's pick the base plate on the intersection of grid line A and 1, and let's call that BP1. So as you look at your drawings, that says that that plate is 1 inch thick. So as I look back at my plate definition schedule here, BP1 is 1 inch thick. And then it is 16 inches. And you can see I already have length or diameter. Length is parallel with the web. So as you look at your plans here, you can see the column is rotated. It's a 10 by 6 column, and it is, as it is put in the plan view, it is the long side is vertical. So let's go with 1'4", and then the width parallel with the flange as 12 inches. And then we go to the hole locations parallel with the flange. We want 2 holes, and then the spacing between them holes, we want that to be 13 inches or 1'1". The rows of holes parallel with the web, we want 2 holes, and the spacing there, we want that to be 9 inches. The hole type, it's for an anchor bolt. So we want to leave that an anchor bolt. Otherwise, you could pick standard round, oversized, or them are the other options. So anchor bolt. The bolt diameter, looking back on your plans, it says 1 inch diameter anchors. Bolt diameter 1 inch. The hole diameter, as you change the anchor bolt diameter here, I'm going to change this one here to 3/4. And then you can see when I click on the hole diameter, it automatically changes that. So I'm going to change this back to 1. Click on hole diameter, changes it to 1 13/16. That is the standard oversized hole for an anchor bolt, a 1 inch diameter anchor bolt. Your weld size, you can change that here. You can leave it as blank, and then SDS2 will calculate that out as it puts in the base plates, the columns and the base plates. Or if you have a job where the engineer calls out the weld size that they want on that particular base plate, this is where you can enter that. Again, any questions on any of this information up here, there is a help menu. And then your steel grade A36 material. So the next base plate, if you go stay on grid line A, intersection A and 3, if we call that base plate there, base plate number 1 also, because it is the exact same plate as the previous one. It's a 1-inch thick plate, 12 by 16. Same, has to have the same size anchor bolts. Then next, for base plate number 2, let's go back up to grid line B as in boy and 1, the intersection there. And let's call that base BP2. And you can see that base plate there, according to your sheet S1, is a 1-inch plate by 18 inches by 18 inches. As I look on my schedule here, base plate 2, 1 inches by 18 by 18. Hole columns 2, the spacing between the holes is 15 inches or 1 foot 3. The other spacing, 2 rows of bolts, 15 inches. And this one here has a 3/4 inch anchor bolt. So anchor bolt is the type, 3/4 inch diameter, and again that has a 1 5/16 hole. The next column over is at the intersection of B and 2 is a 1-inch plate by 18 by 18. The previous one is the exact same one, so that base plate we'll call BP2. Then we go to the intersection of B and 3, and that base plate is different from the previous one, so we'll call that BP3. And as I'm going through these, I am writing them numbers, BP1, BP2, BP3 on my anchor bolt plan. That way when I go through and input my columns, it's going to ask me for the base plate, and what I look for is the BP1, BP2, BP3. But when SDS2 actually picks the base plate out of the schedule, when we get into the model I'll show you this, but it actually goes by the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you can see along the left hand side here. So if you put in a column in your model and you select BP1, and SDS2 is actually looking at line number 1. So let's say later you come back and BP1, for whatever reason you change this to BP2 or 10, let's just say, SDS2, and you put a BP1 down here further, it's not going to look for BP1. It's going to use the base plate on line 1. So one thing to keep in mind as you change piece marks here, that SDS2 is not looking at the piece mark, it's looking at the line number it is on. Okay, so back to BP3. Your S1 sheet says it's 3/4 by 12 by 12. It's got 2 rows of holes parallel, 2 columns of holes parallel with the flange at 9-inch spacing. 2 rows of holes parallel with the web at 9-inch spacing. It's an anchor bolt again, 3/4 inch diameter anchor bolts, and the rest we'll leave as is. Then we go up to grid line BP or B.7 and 2, and that's a different base plate than the other ones, so we'll call that BP4. And that base plate is 3/4 inch. And this one here is parallel with the web, is 14 inches. And then parallel with the flange is 8 inches. The whole columns parallel with the flange, they're spaced 11 inches apart. Actually, that is wrong. That there shouldn't be 11. That should be 2 inches or 2 rows of bolts. They are spaced 11 inches apart. Then there's 2 rows parallel with the web, and they are spaced 4 inches apart. Anchor bolt is the type. That one there says it's 3/4 inches. And we'll leave the rest as is. Then the last column is intersection of C and 1. And as you look at the previous base plate we put in, 3/4 by 8 by 14, it's the same one, so we'll call that BP4. So our base plate schedule should be complete for the base plates. Now on this particular project, there are no cap plates that we need to put into the schedule. But for example, if you had a tube steel column, say a 6x6 tube steel column, and you wanted to cap off the top of the column with a 1/4 inch plate, you could put them into the schedule here and just say you want to call it CP1 rectangular plate, 1/4 inch, say for a 6x6 column, let's say it was 5.5 inch plate, and then the 5.5 the other direction, and then the holes, you're not going to put any holes in there, so you can skip all that information, skip the anchor bolts and the bolts and so on. It'd be A36 material. You could add that into the schedule here. Then when you would put in your column at your top of your column connection, you could pick that cap plate. But again, for this project here, all of our cap plates are going to be automatically created by SDS2, so we do not need to put that in there. Since this was copied here, it says note that changes to these marks will not be reflected on gather sheets with a drawing of the original mark. If you have previously created gather sheets, is what it's saying, so we will ignore that. Now we'll exit out of the job and fabricator setup and go back to the main menu, and we will continue with the next video.